It is now 5:57, and we are out of closed executive session. We'll reconvene the regular meeting of the Board of Education with the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First up, we have roll call.
Mrs. Brenner.
Here?
Mr. Bucher.
Here.
Mr. Herrera.
Here.
Mrs. Hauk. Ms. Mayville.
Here.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Here.
Mr. Zicker.
All right, our meeting norms and board protocols are posted on the wall over there behind Mrs. Whitcomb. Do we have any items on the agenda any members of the board would like to amend or move?
Well, I just had a question about, do we need to move the discussion item regarding the CPAs for participation by,
We are gonna reach out to the attorney when we're getting close
okay,
to
because I know he
that.
said something about 8 o'clock or something, he had something else.
He's gonna join us on Google Meet. I told him probably around 6:30, but we'll see how it goes.
Oh, that would be fast.
It,
Because it's all the way down in discussion.
it is, well, so we will see what happens, but, he seemed to be fine with the knowledge that we'd text him and join him when we
Okay.
need to. So, I think we're okay, Lisa, but if
Yeah.
it starts to run long, I think we can.
Can we amend the agenda then?
We can work him in whenever.
Okay. Even if we approve the agenda as it is?
Yep.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, hearing none. I have a motion second to approve the agenda of the regular meeting of the Board of Education on July 15th, 2024 as presented.
So moved.
Second?
So Mr. Herrera and Ms. Brennan. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mrs. Brenner.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mr. Zicker.
Aye.
Mr. Bucher.
Aye.
And Ms. Mayville.
Aye. It is now 6 o'clock PM, and at this time, we will have a public hearing regarding District 100's remote learning days, e-learning on emergency/snow days. Dr. Shug, do you have any comments?
I'm gonna actually turn it over to Dr. Johnson to
Yes.
provide any necessary updates and answer any questions, regarding the proposal that's on the table.
Yes, sounds good. So we took a lot of feedback from last summer, so just wanted to clarify a couple things. For one, the use of an electronic device is 4th grade on up. So for any of our younger kids, I know it was a concern of those that go to grandparents or different daycare providers, that the use of technology may be concerning. And so we will work on packets that'll go home way ahead of time. We also will work with families on an individual basis. Should something come up where, regardless of any age, where someone is unable to complete it in that immediate moment on that day, but is able to complete it within a designated time frame. So some of those details we would work out once the plan was approved. So I know that was of a concern, and those were some things that we had made some changes to from last summer. Another piece that we had talked through is just meeting with individual groups of staff at the building to be able to talk about, if you're not a classroom teacher, what would you be working on? And really working with the staff to say, for example, if you are a reading or math interventionist, what are things that you could be doing if we actually had one of these particular days? I know that they could fill up with a very long list of progress monitoring and data discussions, but really would like to kind of hear from them. So there would be some work with the groups that don't individually have a classroom, and what is it that you would be doing during that day, should we call a day? And then the last piece is really just reflecting on this year. I know Dr. Shug and I had this conversation today of the 4 days that we did take off. This probably would have been a great fit for one of the 4. So by not having a plan, we can't use it. If we have a plan, we still may choose not to use it, so it's not an immediate guarantee if it's not a good fit. So just wanted to clarify some of those points from last summer, because I really feel like we received a lot of good feedback from last year's plan.
And just to clarify again, as Dr. Johnson said, certainly this would provide an option to utilize an e-learning or a remote day, but not an expectation that those days would in fact be e-learning or remote days depending on the circumstances. And in addition to that, as we shared last year, it would really still be my intention to have the first day continue to be a regular emergency day that we would make up, and then consider each other day on a case-by-case basis. I think that first day, you're extending the school year by one day, that's certainly something that I think is very reasonable and that we can coordinate well. And then as we continue down the pathway, if there's a need for more, again, considering those on a case-by-case basis, if they would be appropriate or not for remote learning.
I know we do have this on the agenda for board discussion later, so I think at this time, we will open the hearing up for public comment. If anyone present wishes to speak on this particular issue, you can approach the podium that Janine will wheel out for you and state your name, and you have 3 minutes. I do know that we had written public comment from Ms. Taylor, and she had a portion of it that related to e-learning, so I think I'm gonna read that portion of it now, and then I'll read the rest of it during regular public comment. So this is from Wendy Taylor, BEA President. I encourage you to consider the e-learning remote learning plan that is being presented tonight. Many members reached out to me about the snow day situation this last school year. I think there's still some work that can be done to this plan, but nothing that would cause you to postpone voting on it today. I think emphasizing the remote part of the plan versus the e-learning portion could ease some of the equity issues that were raised last time. While I do not personally care about extra days in June, I do think that moving up the days to the end of the school year has some negative effects. Snow days cannot be made up by seniors, they come after the AP tests, etc. And quite frankly, some of us need as long as summer break as we can get. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board on the subject of e-learning? Okay, step forward, state your name. And you have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Colin Clausen. I'm a parent of elementary age children at Lincoln Elementary, kindergarten and soon to be second grade. I wanted to speak out once again on the e-learning proposal for snow days in the winter. I spoke about it last summer. I'm here to speak about it against it again. I'm no fan of e-learning. I believe it to be a low-value, high social cost proposition for parents, teachers, and ultimately, in my opinion, a waste of time when implemented in the fashion that it's currently being discussed. To be fair, if there was a District 100 offering for students to attend school virtually for an entire year, and the infrastructure was dedicated to remote learning as a permanent method of instruction, as a permanent means of education, and parents and teachers had the ability to opt in for any one of a number of valid reasons, I would support, I can understand that as an avenue for policy within the district. I'm not advocating for that. I'm against it, but I could understand the approach. Again, not advocating, but if e-learning was being built out as a part of a disaster recovery plan where buildings, structures, or God forbid, lives were lost, and we were looking to sustain educational efforts in the face of extreme hardship, I could find a way to understand that. In my opinion, the proposal at hand is none of these things. And it's my opinion that it's fundamentally unserious because the desired outcomes are unserious. That being the dallying of a few extra days at the end of the year. And I think it fails to truly consider the trade-offs between administration, and parents, teachers, and kids. It's seeming to be something of a power struggle between administrative convenience on the part of the district to count days and extreme inconvenience amongst the community members of the district that the district serves. Or it just leads to flat out disengagement on the part of those community members who just don't participate on an e-learning day or can't or need to explain their way around it or any one of a number of myriad reasons. But to restate prior comments, e-learning is low quality and socially isolated. Its implementation by this design is sporadic and severely limited in nature. You are unnecessarily cramming down administrative burden of what is inherently a centralized process, the running of the school. On snow days, when the weather is inclement, you're asking parents and caregivers to assume quite a lot to facilitate e-learning for a day. You're asking kids to engage outside of their accustomed learning environments and outside the presence of their peers and teachers. You're asking teachers to bend their curriculum and planning and double their efforts around yet another complication in an already complicated environment for them. While working parents are looking first to address the child care days that on days they may still have to work, you're asking them to also press administrative responsibilities onto caregivers, many of whom, to your point, grandparents, et cetera.
Mr. Clausen, I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap up your comments. The 3 minutes is expired.
Didn't see that, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'd like to challenge, I'd urge you to consider the proposal in a practical light from a cost-benefit standpoint and in view of where we live and what is a fairly normal part of Midwestern life. We don't want to cram down administrative burden of running the school when the express role and responsibility of the district is to do just that in person at the school. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we had a couple others. Gretel?
Hello, I'm Gretel Baird, and I'm an employee district for 18 years as a para. And my apologies if this has already been discussed or brought up. When I just skimmed it, I do apologize, I skimmed it, but I just want to make sure that the paras are also being told what to do on that point too. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gretel. I think we had one other speaker, maybe? No, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Rachel Ambling. I'm not a fan of public speaking, but I'm here today just to express my support for the remote learning for a snow day. I have 3 boys. They're going to 8th grade, 6th grade, 4th grade. And every day they have to bring their laptop back anyway. So for me, it feels like, well, since they have their computer and snow day, they're not going anywhere. They're just staying at home. That day is being wasted. They're not doing anything. Probably they would be playing games also. So it's not something that I can easily get them to, because there's no homework really. It's not like the teachers really prepare something for them ahead of time. So I feel like if they use their laptop and at least do some sort of assignments, then that day is not being wasted. And usually for summer, we have travel plans. And since you're going to another country, you usually have to book way ahead. And I feel like if you drag all those snow days to like June, it would, I hate for my kids to miss school. But then I feel like I have no choice also because I can't easily rebook everything, like hotel tickets and stuff. So I feel like it's much better if you just do the virtual learning instead of trying to like make up all those days and then end up the attendance is not all that high anyway. So that's my feeling about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sarah Lauterbach. I also have the same 2 children going to Lincoln Elementary. There's a couple other things that my husband didn't have a chance to talk about, but the thing for me, these days are review days. They're not days where we're going to be learning new things. In elementary school, the kids only have 1 recess as it is. So we're saying that there's so much content that we need to teach to them during the day that we have to limit the amount of free time and socialization time that they have, which is developmentally important. So we're saying that this curriculum is so important that we have to take away this other developmental thing. And now you're saying, but it's not really that important because we can take away 4 more days. The other thing for me is this district is low income. We just applied for and got a grant to cover meals for everybody in the district. And so this is clearly something that is important enough that we applied for that grant. And then we also qualified and got that grant. And now we're saying, but we want to take 8 of those meals away from kids. Or the possibility of taking 8 of those meals away, because if we're doing remote learning, they're not going to have a way to get those meals. So those two things are, I mean, I'm coming at this from an elementary level. If there was a way to do something different at the high school level where you've got more kids that are self-sufficient, but to do this at a district-wide for kids across the spectrum in so many different ways, I think it's just, we're making a problem out of something that isn't. For us, I understand the travel, but we only have to make up 5 days in this district. I grew up in a district where you made up every snow day. And so there were times that we had closer to 2 weeks that we had to make up. That's a different situation. We have 5 days, and when the calendar comes out a year and a half before the school year starts, we know when that last day is. So if we're making travel plans and I have to make them before March, I assume that there's a time that I just can't schedule anything until after that last makeup day is out. So it's not, I struggle with that a little bit just from my background of knowing we didn't always know, and it could be a lot more. 5 days isn't that much if you're making plans ahead of time. So, okay.
Thank you. Sure.
Good evening. My name is Doug Shiloh, and I'm a 21-year district employee. I'm a custodian over at Belvedere High School, and I'm also the secretary for the BESA Union. If you haven't seen Brett Daler here, well, I'm kind of the tall version of him. I thank you, everybody on the board, for their time with the things that are happening in the district. It's a wonderful job that you're doing. I appreciate it. As pertaining just to, from our point of view as BESA, I just wanted to have this in the mix. I respect and appreciate all the comments people are making, especially like parents. I'm a grandparent for a District 100. 2 employees have been a parent. So there are a lot of factors that you have to look at. But just one thing to maybe keep in mind with what you're doing with snow days. Because we had a late start into June, we have about 55 employees in BESA. So when the gun starts with school, we got to start cleaning, make it presentable, in fact, a high standard for all of our students and families. But if you figure, if my math is right, I may be wrong, but if we have 55 employees and they work 8 hours a day, that's 440 work hours per day times 4 days. That's 1,760 hours that we're behind the 8 ball. So just something to consider in the whole mix of what you're having to deal with. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on the topic of e-learning emergency days? All right, hearing none, the public hearing regarding District 100's remote learning days is closed. Next on the agenda, board member celebrations, positive highlights. This is a time for each board member to share a positive event or activity or other item they have heard or seen within District 100. Does anyone have anything they want to share tonight?
I know power was an issue at summer school today, but I have heard some positive things in relation to summer programming for the kids that are able to go. And also, like, I see all the routes out consistently and the drivers in the summer, so I think those are both positive things to keep some of our kids engaged in schooling or getting those services that they need.
Anyone else? It's quiet tonight. I kind of want people in the audience to share their crochet projects. Because we have 3 crocheters, which is like a new record and kind of addicted, so. All right. So I would just like to take a minute to acknowledge Sarah's service on the board. Sarah has served on the board for the past year and a half. I greatly appreciate her stepping up, running for the board, sitting up here, leading the board for the past 14, 15 months. Sarah is a former employee of the district. She is a super valuable and valued employee of the district. I've been on the board now almost 12 years, and Sarah impressed me from the get-go. I'm a little bit irritated to learn how young Sarah is, because that means she was super young, and her competence way back when I started is even more impressive in that light. So, Sarah, we want to thank you. We want to wish you best of luck in your future endeavors. And we've got a little token from the district to present to you. Alrighty, moving right along. We have our board committee reports next up on the agenda, starting with policy and personnel. Mr. Zickert, do you have anything you'd like to highlight or discuss or share regarding the policy and personnel minutes?
Just really quick, most of the stuff that we would discuss is coming up pretty soon on the agenda anyway. The other thing I'd like to point out that maybe get there was one on the agenda about hiring LPNs and RNs. I would suggest if you become, not engaged, but just become informed about that, because there was a lot of discussion from both sides of the fence on that. And there were more school nurses there than I thought there were gonna be at the meeting, even though it was remote and virtual. So it's just something to keep an eye on.
Is that first reading tonight?
No, I don't even think it's.
Okay,
it's just
it was just a discussion.
It's just a discussion.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for any of our policy committee members? Alrighty. So we have first readings tonight on policy 2160, board attorney, 470, resource conservation, 480, accounting and audits, and 6150, home and hospital instruction. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the first readings of these policies? Okay. Next up is the Business Services Committee meeting, also from July 9th. Tom or Jorge, do you have anything to highlight or share?
There's only one will show up later, so.
Yeah, there's nothing new.
Okay. Any questions for our Business Services Committee members? All right, and then our Educational Services Committee from June 12th. Ms. Hauk is not here. I don't have anything in particular to highlight or share regarding the educational service minutes. Does anyone have any questions or comments about that meeting? Okay, as a reminder, we have Facilities and Long Range Planning Committee meeting coming up this Thursday, July 19th. That'll be at North High School. And we have Educational Services and the Parent Teacher Advisory Committees coming up on Wednesday, August 7th. Those are open meetings. Members of the public are welcome to attend. All right, at this time, we're going to have a regular public comment. Members of the public and employees of District 100 may make public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board can step forward, and you will have 3 minutes for your comments. You do have the first half of Ms. Taylor's email, so I will go ahead and read that. This is from Wendy Taylor, BEA President. I will not be able to attend the board meeting tonight and was hoping this could be read in the public comments. If not, it's truly not that big a deal. Thank you. Hello, Wendy Taylor, BEA President here with a few thoughts about a couple of items you will be discussing this evening. First is the policy about allowing the children of employees who live outside the district to attend our schools. I have not witnessed strong feelings from board members about this, and the way the policy is written would be prohibitive for our members to utilize. I do, however, think you should consider passing the policy as written, so that down the road it could be tweaked to be a good method of retention or attracting teachers to our district, and any changes in the policy could be implemented quickly. I already read the second half of her email, so that is from Wendy Taylor, BEA President. Anyone else? Alrighty. Next up are our consent agenda items. Are there any items on the consent agenda that anyone on the board would like to take out for separate consideration?
Number 10.
Alright. Anything else? Okay. So, Member Whitcomb requested to have item 10 removed. That is destruction of closed session recordings. Anyone else? Okay. So do I have a motion and a second to approve all consent agenda items not requested to be pulled as presented?
So moved. Second.
All right, so that's Mr. Herrera and Mr. Booker. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mrs. Brenner.
Aye.
Ms. Mabel.
Aye. Do I have a motion and a second to approve consent agenda item number 10 as presented?
So moved.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
And then Mr. Herrera. All right. Discussion, please.
So I've pretty consistently said, not pretty, I've consistently said the same thing. I think we don't have a storage issue. We don't have a problem or a reason why we need to destroy these. And so I think for the, maintenance of historical record, I will be voting no for the destruction of, I know it comes up regularly. It's gonna come up, again and again, but it's been my consistent position that we're not wanting for space and, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? And so for me, it would be a no.
I feel the same way. I think if we had a paper issue, or back in the old days, when we had a storm in the rooms over there, that's one thing, but nowadays, space and, up in the cloud is not a big deal. 18 months isn't that long, considering how long we keep student records and things like that. And the chances of ever going in there is about 1 in probably 1,000 or more, but I think considering it's not that big a deal, it's worth it for the 1 in 1,000. That's just my opinion.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
No.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mrs. Brenner.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
No.
Mr. Zickert.
No.
And Ms. Mabel.
Aye. Motion fails, 3-3. All right. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the revisions to existing Board of Education Policy 2:40, board member qualifications as presented?
So moved.
Second. Mr. Herrera and Ms. Brenner, any discussion?
Yeah, I think that, I've sat on this discussion for a long time now, as Mrs. Brunner has too. And there's been a lot of discussion on it, a lot of viewpoints expressed. We discussed it at the board meeting, we brought it to the full board too. So I think it's got its dutiful airing, so to speak. I am all for student participation. I think that getting them involved and engaged in some of these decisions is a good thing. We've done it on the strategic plan, we did it on the high school schedule and things like that, but that was at the non-board level things. From somebody that's, and Sarah has too, from somebody that's sat in these positions, the sausage is made in the meetings before now. If you really want valuable input from the kids that's gonna have substantive effect, the time to get it is when the proposals are being built and vetted and things like that. By the time they get here, they're adding stuff or they're adding their opinions, good or bad, that the decision or the proposal has already been made. I think it ought to be, I think it ought to be in the forefront, not the back end. So for that reason, I think if we want to invite them or, Dr. Shug, and I know everybody says we can do both, and I'm not saying we can't, but I think the more important thing to me would be to sit with them on a cabinet level position if we want to do that. Have the student councils have a day with Dr. Shug every month and express their viewpoints and things like that. In my personal opinion, I think that's far more effective than having them as an honorary board member, but as I said, that's just my personal opinion.
So I spoke out about, with questions and input regarding having a student voice in the component for selection of the members. And so absent seeing that being an intricate part of the process, and I do share some of the feelings that Matt shared as well. A ceremonial position through which they can't vote, as opposed to maybe other opportunities we could create, make this a miss for me. Not that we shouldn't find ways to continue to engage students and have them be invested and involved, but for that reason, I'd be voting no.
I mean, I'll just say I've gone back and forth on this in my own head twice. And I think where I'm at now is I think the why is more important, which I think Matt just said it, which I didn't really think it that way, but is earlier in the process, where we can have them come now, where we have them come all the time, give updates on the schools and things at these meetings. By the time it's here, I think our time as a board is best spent focusing on the 7 of us and our opinions, because we have to vote on things, right? And that will add time to that process. I think that's a consideration, and I think there's other ways we can get students involved. Someone, I believe, along the way suggested having them come up with questions or things and have like a pool where we as board members then go talk to the students about that, where they can bounce things back, like, why did you do that, why did you not do that? They're not gonna get that from being here, they're gonna get that from another forum. I don't know exactly what that is, but like I said, I'm kinda on the fence on this. I'm leaning towards the no at this point.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, well, yeah, I've been kind of going back and forth on this. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, how do we move this forward with some student engagement and participation, right? We look at other institutions, for example, Rock Island College has their student trustee that sits on their board. They don't have any voting rights on that board, but yet they're there and they provide input as well to the fellow board members that are on there. So I see this as another opportunity to gain input, whether before or here, from somebody that's living in the seat of a student, from their student perspective. So this is something I can get behind. It's not, it's probably needs some tweaking along the way to get where we need to be, but we gotta start somewhere. And so that's how I see it.
I guess I am fine with having the kids come and sit on the board. I think 2-3 people ever actually attend a board meeting. And it's good for kids who are obviously sort of motivated to begin with, if they put their names in, to want to come sit through these board meetings. Let's get them in here. We need more people to be interested and involved in our board meetings. We need kids to think about, hey, I might want to sit on a school board someday. This is not, we do this to the exclusion of any other good ideas that people have. So I guess if this is voted down today, as it sounds like it will be, I would like to charge the policy and personnel committee to come up with something. Let's get a policy to get kids more involved. If there's something better out there that we keep talking about, then let's find it. But this, just voting this down and staying where we are doesn't make any sense to me if we all agree, and it sounds like we do, that it would be a good thing to get students more involved, and memorializing that in a policy is a way to make sure that it is done systematically and happens going forward, that it doesn't just drop here.
Yeah.
So I'll be voting yes on this tonight, but those would be my feelings on the matter if it does not pass.
I've already said I was gonna vote no, but I do echo your comments on wanting to get these kids involved. I don't wanna let that go. So I will volunteer to work with anybody that would like to work with me and come up with a policy on that. That we could utilize it, maybe on this way, but a different way if it doesn't pass. If it does pass, then it's a moot point.
Yeah, I think bringing it back to policy is good. I think kids have expressed interest to us in emails. I think that's really valid to follow up on, and like Ms. Mayville said, to get kids engaged in something politically in a positive fashion, I think is a good thing too. And getting their input, since that's ultimately who we serve, is why I think this is really important work.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
All right, roll call please.
All right, Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mrs. Brenner.
Aye?
Mr. Zicker.
No.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
No.
Mr. Booker.
No.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye. Motion fails, 3-3. All right. Next up. Employees' interest of 9 non-resident students to enroll in District 100 schools. Do I have a motion and a second to improve a policy to allow employees of non-resident students to enroll, non-resident students of employees to enroll in District 100 schools?
So moved.
Second, Member Herrera and Member Mayville made a motion and a second to approve this policy. Discussion.
I mean, Sarah knows this is one we've talked a lot about in policy for months, literally months now. And there's been a lot of opinions on it, a lot of back and forth. There never was, I think Mrs. Taylor's exactly right. There never was overwhelming support by anybody for it. I think there's a lot of issues involved from how, I know, moving parts, I guess, on the percentage and what teachers thought was fair and how other teachers looked at it, because we haven't heard from the ones that may say that I live in the district, that's why I moved here. There's also the time of when kids move in and stuff, what problems that may cause or may not cause. I just think, for me, there never seemed to be an overwhelming issue to want to do it, so I guess that's why I wasn't that enthusiastic about it from the beginning.
Go ahead.
I know when we discussed it before, and this is one of the reasons I lean to the no, is how do we handle specials or capacity issues and things like that? Did we ever get a definitive way or smooth way that would be handled?
Yeah, and that's why I'm against it, what I said at policy, because I think we have other issues clearly we're dealing with right now in relation to Perry and facilities, and if we were to have a new Perry, what does that look like? So there's so many, to me, enrollment implications overall.
And we don't
This
have-
just adds another complexity.
That's what I
And
wanna
we
know.
did bring it forward, like Matt said, because Wendy's like, we'll just bring it forward to the full board, because there wasn't a lot of yes or no either way, so that's why,
It was more the feeling that we batted this around a long time.
we talked about it too much.
Yeah, we talked about it too
Right.
much. Let's just let the decision be made and move on.
Yes.
Instead of putting it on the agenda again every
Correct.
month. So that was the nexus of that. Sarah's exactly right.
But do we get into that intricacy? No, because that would be like, once the policy, came into fruition, what is the admin policy, or, that the admin team would develop after that, but I just think there's so many other unknowns right now, like I stated, that just, it seems low hanging at this point.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Herrera,
No.
Ms. Mayville,
No.
Mr. Zickert,
No.
Mr. Bucher,
No.
Mrs. Brenner,
No?
Mrs. Whitcomb.
No,
Motion fails. 0-6. Next up on the agenda, insurance renewals. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the renewal of the district's insurance policies for fiscal year 2025 as presented?
so moved.
Second.
Ms. Whitcomb and Mr. Herrera. Any discussion?
I'll speak on this a little from business services, because this has kind of been a thing that's carried on for years, and it's a bigger, and Joanne will probably comment on this, it's kind of a big animal to tackle because of the renewal dates and alignments and being part of certain groups and things. The reality of it for me, and we need to keep kind of pushing forward, is Joanne, I think, has done a good job of trying to align us and get us in a place where we can even try to do this and look at other options. But we haven't done it in, how many years has it been?
The last time he did was 21. You haven't
But-
switched from.
But we haven't changed carriers or
Right.
gone out to bid in how long?
I guess 13 years.
In 13 years. So I think that wouldn't be a bad thing to look at. And overall, I just think we need to keep moving in that direction.
And I know, Mrs. Armstrong, you had some thoughts on a bidding process cycle.
Yep, so, when we talked about this last year in July, at the renewal time, we discussed going out to bid and really looking at that process. So, once we got budget arranged and things, I started really digging into that process. and unfortunately realized that we were past some critical points at that point. So in the recommendations that I have here, I've outlined the full process of what it would look like to go out to bid, which I agree is a viable option for us to do, and it should be done. And that process will start next month with the issuance of an RFP, or an RFQ, I should say, which is requesting qualifications. And it would basically give us some quotes based on what our insurance coverages are for 2025, what we're renewing tonight, using those limits. By that point, we can get some of those preliminary quotes and the qualification determinations by that November, December time for us to talk as a board. At that point, we can make a decision if we want to issue that formal RFP process to go out to bid, which gives CLIC the notification that we are going outside. The reason we want to do this preliminary RFQ process is if we give CLIC notice that we are looking outside, we lose our status as a CLIC member for the next year's renewal, which means we lose our abatement credits and any potential favorable claim history we have, because we become factored out of the group cooperative bargaining, and that they have to bargain all of their plans without us in it. So the good, the bad, and the ugly of us being there or not being there is taken out of their computation. So they will not give us those benefits. And when last year we had an actual debit across, so we had higher claims than expected, so we paid a 15% premium on that. This year, when you look at the renewal, not only are we not paying that premium, we are also getting a 16% discount because of good claim history. So we've seen that shift, and I would be leery of taking that away. So I really kind of wanted to go through and outline that timeline, that if this is what we want to pursue, which I do think is a good idea to do that, this defines that timeline, lets the board also know this is what you're gonna expect at each month, and we have that process defined, it's ready to go. And I do want to reiterate, when this was done in 2021, they went through that preliminary process, but you were very late in the process, and so the board said, no, we're not going to give that notification. This allows us to start that process again, but during that preliminary process, you only got one response, and that was from a Illinois group that included police and fire, which of course are much higher risk categories and risk pools than we would be in as a school district. So I want to make sure we temper expectations as well, is not knowing what we're going to get, and most of the people that would be interested in bidding us are going to be more of a cooperative. So it keeps all of our options open and allows us to look at a whole process of what's out there, what brokers want to work with us, and what can we get, and we can compare it to this year's dollars of where we are, doing that apple to oranges, if we want to actually give that notice and give out in the December, January timeframe to CLIC.
So this is where I live every day. And I will say, based upon what I'm seeing in the industry, this is a decent renewal. I mean, it errs to the side of almost being good, which is a very difficult thing to say in this particular insurance climate. So I think it's easy to vote yes for the renewal because it's, you know, we have to have insurance, and B, it's a decent renewal. I do feel strongly that we need to move forward with pursuing the RFQ. And just to reiterate, if we signal that we're gonna go to the RFP, whether we move or not, we are triggering some losses of, you know, credits and things for next year. So I think the sooner, the better. So I think your timeline is aggressive but appropriate, to be doing that ahead of time, because the last thing we want to do, as much as I wanna shop this out and believe that there's a possibility that perhaps we could do better. We don't know that. 13 years is a long time to have no individual assessment of, you know, whether or not we could. It's too long, in my opinion. But I also think we have to, I would add from my professional experience, if we don't have a pretty good sound thought that we are, you know, really, really excited about someone who's submitted an RFQ, we don't want to give up for next year if we, you know. So I think we have to be aggressive. We want to be all about trying to find a better option. And I think it might include, you know, a broader number of people or a broader group of people actually being involved in looking at or reviewing the RFQs and things. And I think, this is one of those situations that I would say, I will err on the side and encourage other people to evaluate for themselves whether or not they would. When in doubt, don't. So if we get to that November time and we do not have a really good solid feeling about where we think we might end up, it's giving up a lot for an entire renewal cycle. And then speaking again from the insurance perspective, when you come back in, you know, they let you back at the table because that's the way the program is structured. But they don't have to give you the best options on the second year either. So they're gonna spank you and, you know, sit you down at the kids' table for 1 year. But they don't have to give you the aggressive discounting that we might even be due in the next year. They have to let you back in and play well with others, but they don't have to say you get the best. So I'd love it if there was a better option, but I think we have to be judicious about it.
Thank you for providing this timeline, Mrs. Armstrong, that's really helpful. So we should, once we get the responses from the RFQs, we'll have some better information to work with about whether we want to kind of take the nuclear option here or not. Is that a layperson's correct understanding of this?
Yes, so my expectation is that I will refine the RFQ process and we will get that issued no later than September. We want to give it ample time for responses. This isn't something you say respond in 2 weeks because this is going to require a lot of input from the insurance. They're going to want to know a lot of the details and get our properties, which are other things we're working on other agenda items as well. This gives us everything. I would be hoping to bring those responses in no later than that November, December, so we can make an informed decision to provide that notice. We have to provide notice by the end of January, beginning of February. So that is our end date, but I would like us to hopefully be going into winter break already knowing kind of where we're headed at that point. And that's why I did kind of already start this process, start developing pieces of that preliminary RFQ from what was done in 2021. I just need to update with some of that more information that's current, and then we can get this out pretty quickly and give that time to respond.
All right, any thoughts on the insurance renewal that we're voting on this evening? Anyone have anything to add on that? All right, roll call please.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mr. Herrera,
Aye.
Mr. Booker, Mr. Zickert,
Aye.
Mrs. Brenner,
Aye.
Ms. Mayville.
Aye. Motion passes 6-0. Next up, do I have a motion and a second to approve a contingency for the District 100 boiler installation in the amount of $200,000 as presented?
So moved.
Second. Member Guerra and Member Brenner. Any discussion on that?
This came through business services, and I just want to note, we're requesting an additional $200,000 here for things extra for the installation of the boilers. We've known this all along, and we set, contracts that we put together to have this done. And the $200,000 is not the exact amount. I think it's 44, and then possibly up to $200,000. That's a lot of money additional to put out for this, where I think that should have been buttoned up in our contract at the time when we did these things with the installers. And I think it was, quite frankly, missed, or it's a miss by us to do it this way. I would want to vote against this, but I think we have to do it now due to the time factor that we're under. Otherwise, I'd be a no, but I don't like being put in a position where we don't have a choice, and $200,000 can go a long way towards a lot of other projects that our schools want and need. And I feel, quite frankly, this is a miss, big miss.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've looked at it. I don't think, I could be wrong, but I think I've looked at them. Rockford doesn't even allow contingencies when they build in their contracts. It's bid as is, and there's no contingencies afterwards. I guess upon reading this, my only problem was when I read this first, it seemed, I mean, I read it, it seemed logically written, and not trying to criticize it at all. And I talked to Mr. Bucher, and I got, the discussion of business services, I got a different opinion on that I agree, I do think we have to do it, we don't have a choice. It's one of those things that we either do it or we're gonna wish we would've. And, because the alternative's worse than the doing it, but I do think that when these contracts come through, this kind of stuff shouldn't, I mean, it shouldn't happen, but it did, and I think we have to live with it now.
Well, I don't know that we have to live with it, because, I mean, obviously but again, I think we will, I think that we will. I guess I would just like to ask a question that I don't think anybody that you may not know, and I'm not intended to put you on the spot, because by the time I had time to dig into this further, it was too late to send the question. Does the contingency that they're now asking for, and again, I know historically other information is available, I did not take the time to go back and look. Does this move the needle, and would it have put someone else in a better position?
As far as the bid results?
Yeah.
I don't have that offhand, but if I recall, I think there was a big enough variance.
There was only one response to the RFP.
Okay.
So it wouldn't put anybody else in a better position. Typically, in projects like this, we always have a contingency, and Matt is 100% right about Rockford not carrying the contingency in the RFP, but they carry the contingency themselves. Now, what happened was this project started with the principal architect of Larson Darby, and most of the districts that he works with, they carry the contingency in the RFP. When the project was turned over to another architect in Larson Darby, he works with Rockford and a lot of other districts that carry their own contingency. And there's where the miscommunication happened. We do carry contingencies for our projects typically through the RFP process. For instance, the RFP for the door, for the exterior doors, the $800,000. There's about an 8% contingency for things that pop up, and that keeps the project on time, on task, and it keeps us from coming back and asking the board for, can I have a $25,000? Can I have $5,000? And you're 100% right. It was a miss, and it was a miss on my part, and I take full ownership of that. And we've had lengthy discussions with Larson Darby so that this does not happen again. Now, because I am asking for $200,000, by no means means that I'll be spending $200,000. Right now, we're at just shy of $45,000. That came from a recommendation from the manufacturer of the boilers, that Lars would prefer that we install the boilers, the water piping in a different manner than what is typical.
Well, for me, in recent so two questions. What was the total spend on this project?
That is $2,345,000.
Okay, just over 2 million, so I was right on that. So not being in this position again would be great, but we've been in this position before where, well, we've already spent this much, so don't we have to spend, we should keep going with other things in recent history. I mean, as recent as, the last year and a half or 2 years. And so it's difficult, but have we approached well, it doesn't matter, we didn't approach it and negotiate no contingency or carrying our own contingency, so I guess it doesn't matter, but I don't know. I don't know how I will vote. I mean, I think it will pass, and it's probably necessary that it does, but I feel like it's sanctioning the idea that we're at this place again where, well, we've already spent this much, so we really should just, say yes. And I don't think I can connect the dots fiscally in that scenario.
Yeah, and just one more caveat, that if the contingency was part of the RFP, there would have been $234,000 that we would have asked for originally. So it would have been,
Yeah.
$250, or $2,500,000. So we're actually asking less than what the 10% contingency would have been.
Yeah, I get it.
in your-
For me, it's just process. Then we should have done that.
Like I said, I'm taking full ownership, that's.
Well, I thank you for doing that. That can't be easy to,
No, I agree with that too, I do appreciate that, and I also think that.
very much.
Considering the multi-million-dollar projects that we're looking at coming up, that we consistently work with Larson and Darby, this should be
Can't do this again.
This should be, not a wake-up call, but at least just a reminder that we, even though we have a great relationship with them, we have to make sure we're on the,
Yes, sir.
I mean, oversight on these, on the big one at 250 million or whatever is a lot of pennies, so.
Is this costing us more money than it would have been if it was included in the original?
No.
Okay.
I would like to add one caveat, just for understanding. If we had been approached with this situation, just from my perspective, so everybody's, if this had occurred and it was not a ESSER project, I would be making a recommendation that we come with every change order and have the board approve every change order. The problem with this boiler installation is it's the ESSER funds, it has to be done by September 30. We only have 1.5 more meetings to say, okay, yep, we've got to get this done and paid for by September 30th. So had this situation occurred with a project that was not, which I fully respect and thank Sean for taking that, this was missed, this was Larson and Darby having issue and us having that issue, the board can expect that we would not be coming back and asking for a blanket contingency. We would have every change order brought to you. That would be how I would prefer it in this situation, so that you have full eyes on this. This is really, and unfortunately, it's what Board Member Booker is talking about, is that, you're kind of under the gun on this because we can't delay the actual full project.
That makes sense. Yep. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mrs. Brenner.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
No,
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
And Ms. Mabel.
Aye. Motion passes by 1. Next up, do I have a motion and a second to approve the facility use policy update as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Herrera and Ms. Brenner? Discussion.
I think that we've done everything in this situation to button it down and followed everything that was asked of every entity to be in a better place before we start the school year. I think, kudos to everybody who was involved and realized that when we were in January and behind the 8 ball and then February behind the 8 ball, that they vowed we wouldn't be this next year, and this looks to me to be a way where that will not happen. So I appreciate the work that was invested, and it was no small feat to number of entities and moving parts, so I appreciate the effort.
Will they still fill this out in paper function?
For currently, yes, but it is moving into the FMX request system.
That's what I
where
was
they'll be
hoping,
able
that
to
just
see
makes it
that
so much
calendar,
easier.
where then anybody requesting will be able to see everything scheduled on a district calendar, so they can, if they want to use a baseball field, they'll be able to click on the baseball field at North and see what's happening, and if it's even available before they request it. So that is that continued process, but we wanted to have this
Yeah, that
language
makes
down
sense.
first.
It's good. I think that's good. I think that also will clean up the process, just because you can see things and track things more readily and things aren't missed that way.
Anything further? Roll call, please.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mrs. Brenner.
Aye.
Mr. Zickert.
Aye.
Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Ms. Mabel.
Aye. Motion passes 6-0. Next up, do I have a motion and a second to approve the sub-rate pay increases for teachers and paras as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Ady, I was just wondering in relation to like where you have the comparison chart for like Belvedere proposed, RPS Harlem. Are those current RPS in Harlem or is that what they're projecting to have next year?
Those are current. Most are not increasing their rates.
Okay.
Harlem just increased their rates, and so that's what you see there. But everybody else, at least as of now,
Okay.
is staying put.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll say really quickly, I won't vote because my wife does sub every once in a great while, but I do think this is a good idea, and I've really liked us bringing the teachers back under our fold, and I do not miss Kelly, so.
Yeah, maybe, I don't remember the exact statistic, but I know we are doing, before when we were all under Kelly, everyone was kind of doing the same. Now that we've taken it under our own, we're much better, right? What is the statistic? I don't remember.
Yeah, so I don't have it in front of me, but we ended the year right at 71%. Brockford was, I think they were 55%, something like that.
We're winning.
Yeah, so we are doing well, and you know our big goal really is to continue to increase the sub pool, because obviously the more subs we have to pick from, then the better off. But yeah, we're definitely trending in the right direction for sure.
So I guess I would just ask, and you may not have the data right in front of you, custodian and clerical, do we fill many positions there? Do we have many that we've needed subs for? I just wonder why I understand we're paying well, and but we're not making any change to those, and I'm just wondering.
Yeah, and so, I mean, a lot of the reason for not increasing those, at least not at this point, is because the starting rate for our regular employees, we're kind of bumping on the door there.
Yeah, but based on the contract, yeah. Okay.
But even with that being said, we're still competitive with the other districts with those numbers.
Okay.
Thank you both for providing the information
Thank
on
you.
the fill rates. This will definitely give us an opportunity to enhance those fill rates.
Yeah.
And be very competitive going forward.
Hope so.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mr. Zicker.
Abstain.
Mrs. Brenner.
Aye.
Mr. Hooker.
Aye.
And Ms. Mayville.
Abstain. That is passed 4 yeses, 2 abstentions. Next up, possible action to approve the 2024-25 administrative contract for a 10-month administrator at Belvedere South Middle School Assistant Principal. Do I have a motion to approve that contract as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Herrera and Mr. Bucher? Discussion.
Yeah, again, I'll just reiterate in public, I think we have to look at our AP pay, and if we can't raise it in salary, be creative and try to do some incentives in other ways, because we're gonna lose good APs, we already have. So, that's all I wanted to say.
Any further discussion? I agree with Mr. Sickert on that. Roll call, please.
Mr. Herrera.
Aye.
Mr. Hooker.
Aye.
Ms. Whitcomb.
Aye.
Mrs. Brenner.
Aye.
Mr. Zicker.
Aye.
And Ms. Mayville.
Aye. Motion passes 6-0. All right, we have moved up to board discussion items. First up, facilities master plan updates. Dr. Shaw?
Their update is a little bit of a misnomer here. We just talked about this at last Monday's meeting. I know I provided a little bit of additional information. We met on Thursday with the design team, the architects, Larson and Darby, and went through the questions that we had pulled from our last meeting. I know we were able to give you the answer to a few of those questions, but we're still waiting for several answers to several of those questions, so not a ton more information to share tonight. I did just include the recap from the July 8th meeting, and if there was any further discussion or thoughts you wanted to share, I would certainly encourage that. And then when we get down to talking about board meeting dates, we do not have a second board meeting date in August, just because it is August, and that's a very, very busy time of the school year for everyone. But we do have a second board meeting date in September, for September 5th. So hoping that could be our next special board meeting to walk through this in more detail. We would also have the August regular board meeting, so we really have 2 prepared times to have some additional discussion regarding the facilities master plan and next steps. But questions I could answer, additional information you would like me to pull, additional thoughts at this time?
Nothing yet.
Well, I know, we just talked
like I
about
said, it
it.
was a week ago.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, in between meetings, I think everyone should feel free to email Dr. Shug if you have a question that pops up and let her know what you think.
And many of you have, and I really do appreciate that. And then we really just put a Google Doc together where we're getting the answers from whoever needs to get that and then getting it back out to you. So whatever comes to mind, let us know, and we're working on getting you your answers for the August regular board meeting and then September 5th.
Alrighty, thank you. Food service update.
Alright.
Okay, I just wanted to share a few updates we shared at Business Services, as well as most everyone on this board and the public is now aware. Very excited about our CEP status. We are hearing overwhelmingly positive feedback from our community as well as district staff on that option, so I am very excited for that coming down for next year. The other item that we had on discussion regarding food service was a new pilot program that Organic Life is asking for us to consider doing at our 2 high schools. And this was a coffee bar type atmosphere. When I came in, I was very adamant about kind of re-envisioning our cafeterias and making them feel like where our kids want to be. They love sitting at a Starbucks feel with that different seating, kind of looking at ways that we can really encourage them to want to be in our cafeterias, and that will increase participation. Unbeknownst to me, I hadn't thought of the options of coffee bars at our high school. I never thought of having my kid drink coffee at school, but I'm not a coffee household, so I don't know. But Organic Life has partnered with a Chicago-based coffee company called Big Shoulders Coffee, which is very well known in the Chicago area. And they are interested in piloting this if the school board is open to the idea. It would cost nothing to the district to now offer a coffee bar option for our kids. Now, they would all adhere to smart snacks, which means they're low sugar, low fat. They're not going to have, 8 things of sugar packets going in there. Syrups would be sugar-free. They don't come in the venti size. You can get the tall and the little grande, so 12 ounces is the most you're gonna get. It does not, at the committee level, they had asked for some caffeine content comparisons to things that we're already serving. So the 8 ounce coffee has definitely got a little more caffeine than what we're doing with Diet Mountain Dew and the energy drinks, but it's pretty aligned with kind of some of the other things. And what we heard from the committee and some of our participants, the kids are drinking it either way. And so this might keep some of them on campus. Wendy Taylor, made the comment that they're not supposed to have anything but water in there. Couldn't confirm that that's all they're walking in, because most kids are walking in with their cup from Starbucks. Did kind of talk that might help with some tardies and people coming in late with their coffee if they knew that they could get it there at the school. The options that they could offer could include drip coffees, cold brews, the various espresso options, which are more latte type drinks, chai lattes, the blended frozen drinks, and then green, black, and fruit infused teas, so that it would really kind of be what you're getting at your local coffee shop. But again, all the syrups would be sugar-free, everything would be low-fat or non-fat, and these would be a la carte items. So these would not be things that they would be able to just pick up as part of their lunch meal. However, there is the potential at breakfast, it could be part of their milk, if they got just the milk, the 8 ounce coffee latte or whatever, it could be their milk serving if they chose to incorporate that. If we as a district decided we wanted to give that as an option to use that as a milk alternative in their meal. So we talked about it, the committee felt that we really should come and just ask the board as a whole how they feel about this, because I think it was a very surprising idea to me, but I have not heard really strong feelings one way or the other about it, so.
And that part would be for purchase, so the meals would be free, but this is like if they're just going to any
Yep.
store,
They would
right?
have to buy it.
Yeah.
Not being a coffee drinker, so I mean, I don't weigh in on that part. If I remember the days when kids used to, when you talk about coming to school, they, instead of grabbing a coffee, they grab a Mountain Dew when they walked in back in the days when you could do that. The schools made a lot of money selling them. I do think the only thing we'd have to look at is the practical applications of it. I mean, I think the breakfast part in the morning is a great thing. I mean, I fully support that. When kids come in late, especially at the place that her and I work at, for way more than me, that they'll go to breakfast before they go to class. So I think if we do a coffee bar, I'm fine with kids getting their nutritious meal before they go to school, but I think there has to be some logistical things on the coffee bar, that it has to close at a certain time, or you're gonna have kids pulling in the parking lot at 2 minutes before school starts and wanna make sure they get their coffee before they go to class, and they may not make it to class on time. So I just think there's little things like that. I mean, I'm not against it. I just think we have to look at the practical
Yeah,
application.
you don't want that to negatively impact our attendance that we're working on to that example.
Have you talked to the principals about this at all? I think that if not, that would kind of be the
Yeah.
next.
Lindsay Carlson has had a few conversations with Jose Gutierrez, who is her account manager on top of that. I have not specifically talked to them, wanted to get the board's feel before I even, I mean, if the board is not objectable to it, I still wanna have the conversations at the building levels on if they really want it in their buildings, but there's no point in asking if we're not even gonna take that consideration.
And my questions were, is the coffee, the caffeine amount like a crazy amount, which it's about the same as they get a soda, what it looks like. And then the other one is a potential mess for our custodians, if there's coffee cups and things everywhere, so, that's something that you can follow up on, but otherwise, I don't have strong feelings on it.
And at the committee level, we had the BESA president and one of their other representatives, and I think at that meeting, they kind of said they're doing it already.
It's probably about the same as what they're dealing with.
Yeah, they're already having the kids come in with it.
I mean, honestly, I like it. I just think, especially at the high school level, kind of post-COVID, there's just this funk that has settled over kids, and I mean, this is something positive and kind of fun we can try that doesn't cost us anything, and I think kids would like it, or at least some kids would like it, and we can see how it goes, and if they're making a mess and being generally honest about it, then it comes out, but
And your staff would be able to use it as well.
yeah,
So
that's cool.
it's an added for the
I
staff.
like it.
Yeah, so just a couple things. I would say, you had me at chai tea latte. But just a couple of questions as it relates to, we have the CEP now, so we're not gonna be continuing to accrue, negative balances and all of those sorts of things. But this will be a hard and firm lockdown. These accounts, there's no account, they have to pay in real time. There's no putting money on it, okay. And then secondly, one of the few board meetings that I missed some time back, and it's been a while, but I've forgotten what was ultimately decided. Did we not, we discussed, did we secure the services of a third party to be helping us to collect old debt? Where did that end up going?
Yes, we did use a collection agency, which they're finalizing, we're at the last month of that collection. And it was not for meal accounts. It was
Just for
only
attendance,
for
yeah,
the
okay, because I wasn't sure,
fees.
okay. Because obviously, we wouldn't need to continue, I mean, we could perhaps pare it back, okay, so we don't. I mean, I think it's great, I think kids will like it, I think there's no real downside to it. I mean, they're bringing the drinks in already, unless we see that we have a real issue with kids getting late to class, but we just shut it down. You just, okay, if you have to have, some level of restriction on how late before, school you get, whatever, why not?
I like it. I think it's developmentally appropriate. My only other question is, does the school get some portion of any of the proceeds for like fundraising of sorts that it could be, or is that not a part of it?
It's really not a portion, it would be in our à la carte sales, so they would report those to us, so any profit on that, we get the charges for à la cartes and then we pay those back, so.
No.
It's not a reimbursable meal, so they're not making a lot of money off this, but we're not making
Yeah.
a lot of money off it either.
And we don't have to staff it in any way, shape, or form.
No, it'd be staffed by Organic Life.
Yeah.
And, and those are kind of the things we could decide, they originally had said we could have it open all day long, and we're like, no. We could have it during periods, so those are a lot of those details that we have complete control over when it is.
And it sounds like it's gonna need to be fluid.
Yes.
If you try it and then you realize, oh, no, it doesn't work there, we can do it here, and you'll just change it on the fly. Okay.
So Joanne, quick question, and yeah, and I support this initiative too, I can get behind it and support it. It is a pilot program.
Yep.
From Organic Life. They buy all the equipment, right?
Yep.
So, do we have any details? Can you check into some details? If it's a pilot and they pull out, are we gonna be able to keep the equipment?
Oh,
Can you
good
carry
question.
on? Are they gonna take it?
Okay.
What happens at that point? Just so we know. In case if it doesn't continue on beyond the pilot stage.
That's a good question. Now, we won't have this anymore because we will have everybody able to participate in the, CEP National School Lunch Program. So, but is there a mechanism, or has Organic Life indicated, is there a mechanism whereby parents could put money on an account that would allow kids to not have to have $3, $6, $5 in their pocket?
Yep.
So I mean, if a parent was like, all right, fine, I'll put $20 on your account, that's what you got for coffee this month, or today, if you're depending on, I don't know,
Yeah.
coffee's pricey anymore.
The-
Okay, so there would still be.
The Pushcoin wallet that they currently use to
Yeah,
pay for
they could
meals
just go on
still
and
exists.
upload money.
So like people who have positive balances right now with going to CEP, their options is to keep it on that Pushcoin account, and their child can use that, or their student can use that for à la carte meals, for extras, for these coffees, whatever. Or worst case, they can come back, I shouldn't say worst case, that was bad terminology. They can ask for those wallets refunded to them. And what we would do in that case is look to see, do they have any outstanding fees owed to the district? And if not, we would issue those refunds for those wallet accounts.
But can they add more? Will
Yes,
the push wallet
you can go on
stay?
to Pushcoin and add them at any point.
Okay.
Just as an FYI, I did ask Adam to hop on the Google Meet at 7:15, and I told him about 7:30 we would discuss the CPAs. So we can continue working through the agenda at this point, but if we could at 7:30 address the CPAs, or approximately 7:30, that would be helpful for Adam. Thank you.
All right. Next, we've got 24, 25 board meeting dates. Anything?
So you can see that we have a proposal here based on the feedback at the last board meeting for the first Thursday of the month. Unless otherwise noted, there are a few times when that didn't work, so Ms. Ashens put together some other dates. So we would like to go ahead and adopt these for our board meeting schedule moving forward. And again, we'd use those special board meetings at this time for essentially our committee of the whole. And then we would, following that, keep them or cancel them if we do not need them.
Was there also discussion about we would use those for expulsion hearings as well?
Correct, yeah. For whatever need we had, expulsion hearings or if something else had come up.
Well, I asked if we could push it back to today, and that those Thursdays will work. I think, I know right now there's at least one that won't, but it's one, and maybe by the time it comes up, it will work, so I don't have an issue with it.
All right, great, we will go ahead and have Ms. Ashens put those through for your invites so you get them onto your calendars, and then we'll work through them as need be. And again, September 5th would be the special board meeting for Master Facilities Plan.
Right, next up, discussion involving remote learning days.
Well, I came in with one opinion, I'll be honest, I came in with a different opinion than I have right now. And I guess I just need a little more clarity on a couple of things. Dr. Johnson, you indicated we had 4, right? And so I know that that's accurate information. But you said really only one of the days would have been a fit for remote learning.
In casual speaking, yes.
Yeah.
This past winter.
So I guess I'm trying to understand what were the thoughts on, again, we didn't have to make the decision, so we didn't make the decision, but what would have led even in casual conversation to say, well, for 3 of those days, we wouldn't have done it anyway,
Well, again,
or likely not have done it.
yeah, you need some level of advance notice that you're gonna need to do this. Again, that first day we wouldn't count, but when, for example, we were in the middle of that, long cold spell where we had multiple days, that would have been a relatively easy call, to go to a virtual learning day.
Yes.
Might have been a little bit harder on the day when we had the unexpected ice storm, where people may not, at the secondary, have had their devices home, we might not have been able to utilize that as a day. Again, I really think this provides an option as opposed to a dictate, right? Like, I'm still gonna be making a call, I'm gonna have to let the principals and staff know that we might be out tomorrow and we need to be ready for that transition. In many cases, I can do that, but not in every case. So I would just work on a case-by-case basis and utilize that option as I think would be appropriate. That would be the intention.
I guess it doesn't matter, and I'm not asking you to answer a question, so I'm just gonna say, I struggle a little bit with, if we're gonna do it and it's a fit, the day's a fit, why would we not do it for the first day as well? Again, that could be the first day that we do it and it's not a fit, and any of the other days, but for me, I'm not really sure that I understand, the approach there. Having it available, I think implies that we will use it. I think we just need to be prepared that we will take as much heat for having it and not using it as we did for not having it and having it unavailable to use. Because I think there's still gonna be people who are like, well, now we have e-learning, there's no reason why they can't be, So I just think, I don't think it does not gonna eliminate the groundswell of conversation from people on either side of the aisle, as far as that goes.
I do not believe that this will create a solution where everyone will be happy.
No.
Weather is really challenging. Every call is really challenging. It really is. There's a lot of things to consider and a lot of things that are really unpredictable. And yes, I mean, as we heard tonight, there's gonna be people that would like us not to use this option. There's gonna be people that would like us to use this option. Leaving that one day in there, and again, I'm certainly open to board feedback on that, is that the one day, I think sort of preserves the intent of, I think people look forward to a snow day. I think we can make up one day. I think that is, that preserves some of that piece of it, but provides us an alternative should we need to continue to extend the year moving forward.
I voted no before. I still probably and would not be in favor of the policy in relation to like some of the comments that were spoke to this evening. I still, from an equity lens, have concerns. There's still kids that don't have internet access. I still think the best learning happens when we're in front of our teachers and not putting additional burdens on families for how to facilitate that. I would rather see like a padded calendar of sorts with a Casimir Pulaski day or something like that, and or traditional snow days, I guess, but that's just my own personal belief in relation to this.
And I think that's a very potentially positive way to approach it. My husband drove this year for a school district in Wisconsin, and they had built-in asynchronous days, and they built in, maybe it was, some random holiday. And to that end, they were able to absorb those days back in, there was no e-learning, and they were able to absorb those days back in through saying, okay, there were still no days to make up, because there was a mechanism through which they would say, this would have been an off day, but
now it's an attendance day, exactly,
yeah.
that's what I'm saying, yeah.
So I think there's value in evaluating that as a possibility, and I guess the other thing I would say is, unfortunately, I don't know how many people watch board meetings, but I would really love it if we could get a lot more input from parents and families, teachers as well, so that we would have, I mean, because we've gotten a little bit here and there, but, you know, across the board, really, you know, less than a dozen probably people have really actively weighed in. So if you're going back to your schools and your neighborhoods and your buildings, you know, ask people to reach out to the board, because ultimately, you know, we're going to be making the decision for a district-wide decision that will then fall to the superintendent to make in the moment. But if there's strong feelings about this particular option being on the table, one way or the other, or both ways, then I think it would be helpful if people would weigh in and, you know, send an email, you know, make your opinions known.
I think,
I'm sorry.
go ahead, Tom.
I was just gonna say, I think Sarah's point is very good.
Yeah.
To me, the dilemma always is, the adding on the end of the year is one of the negatives. If there's ways we can absorb that throughout the year, I think that's a better option. And I agree with, the people who spoke both today and previously, that I question how much value we're gonna get out of the stay home when your child's looking out the window at 2 feet of snow, and, you know, I just think it's better to try to find an option that way than this, but, I mean, should we still have some means of doing that? You know, I don't know.
To me, I think like
We
if
have a little
there's a
more time.
serious emergency, to me, that's a different scenario where we have to address
Yeah.
something, or obviously as we experienced before with COVID, but this isn't that for me, so.
Well, I also think, I don't know, I feel like somebody said it, and I don't know who it was, so I don't wanna give anybody credit or blame, depending on how you look at it. Those days at the end that we make up are probably no more productive than the days that we miss as a result of the, you know, having the
Right.
snow day
Where
with
if
them,
there's like
you know.
some calendar alterations of
Right.
sorts,
Yeah, if
then
we
you
could just
make
stay
it
in a
more
good
timely.
rhythm where we could reabsorb those throughout the year, I think that's a really,
They
really
just
good
have
option
to
to
be,
look at.
they strategically have to put in, like, obviously, like, you can't say like, oh, we're gonna have this other snow day in October, right? But you have to think of like, when does it start snowing?
Right.
And then potential holiday
Yeah,
dates
to leave
after that, or
room
swap
to-
of
yeah.
SIP day for end of the year,
I
you know,
think it's a
et
great thing
cetera.
to consider.
I think for practical reasons, am I getting this correct, we have to decide this in August,
Yeah.
because you have to have the plan in September.
Correct.
So I would,
So we
I
need
would,
to hear.
I would echo encouraging everybody that has feelings on this, make your voice heard, because it's important to have that, especially from the people who it affects the most.
Yeah.
I mean, my kids are long gone, I have an opinion on it, but it doesn't affect me like it affects the parents out there, the kids out there, and the teachers out there, and whatever else. I mean, make your voices heard. I mean, do it before the August board meeting, which is August 19th, I believe. So sometime between now and the 19th would be a good time to do that.
And if there's room for, although, I don't know, is there room to look at the 2024, yeah, we,
There, well, and I will
4 or
say,
5
just,
calendar?
and Dr. Carson isn't here this evening, but he did work with the calendar committee to try to do that. We did try to address that. We looked at North Boone's schedule, for example, and they were not able to find a way to do that the calendar committee could build any consensus around.
Well, maybe they can keep it on the agenda for next time they look at the calendar.
Well, and I'm sure that they will continue to, you know, I did definitely specifically ask them to try to work on that, and they were not able to
We
achieve
did,
that.
there was definitely, because I was on the calendar committee, there were some concerns with dates, and Bill, maybe we could go back, because I know Melissa Ramirez served on that committee with a certain number of days that 12-month employees would be working. Made it a little complex to say whether a day was going to happen or not happen with some of those additional holidays was what the concern was also brought forward. This was brought to the Ed Services Committee, so there was a stakeholder group that talked through this again. We had talked through it last summer, and we talked through it again this summer. Definitely had the same level of concerns, but ultimately did feel that it should at least come to the board with their recommendation, but I think the understanding of the discussion that's happening today. So.
One thing I just want to point out that, I mean, I think we should have this available as a tool. I think it makes sense. You know, we could have a situation where the power goes out at one of the high schools and we can't get it restored for 3 days. Well, the rest of the district has school during that time, and that high school doesn't. I mean, that's a no-brainer to me, that something is better than nothing. Those high schoolers aren't gonna make those days up at the end of the year, they're gonna lose them. You know, we had we had an issue at North in summer school. That would be an instance where if that happened during the regular school year, boom, you go to e-learning for those secondary students and you've actually saved school days. I think one of the middle schools this year had a potential water issue where we were wondering whether or not we were gonna be able to have school. Again, that would have been a day lost that would have never been made up for those kids. So for that reason alone, I think this is something that absolutely should be in the administration's tool bag. I trust their discretion when to use it. I think it, certainly you're going to get the most opinions on it once we actually do it. Maybe we'll hear from some people between now and August 19th, but I know last time around, we didn't hear from many people until we had those snow days, and then everyone's mad why we aren't doing e-learning like all the other districts do. So I would like to see this pass. I think it makes sense. I think, again, it's a tool in the tool bag that should be used judiciously. But as far as the value of those days, what kids are getting out of them, e-learning versus the end of the year, it's similar. I mean, it really is, generally speaking. I don't know that anyone has the answer on that. So this will be coming back.
This will be coming back in August for a vote, and whatever the board decides to do, I'm always hopeful that we will have no need to use any of them. But it has not been that way these past few years.
All right, next up.
Can we take our CPAs?
Oh,
as
yes,
we have
absolutely.
Adam on
Thank
the
you for
line,
the
I believe,
reminder.
now.
Next up, we are going to discuss policy 7:215, conditional probation / holiday expulsion in abeyance policy. Adam, are you with us?
There he is.
Hold on one second.
Okay, now I think you can hear you.
All right, Adam, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a little quiet. Janine, can we get him? All right. Are you leading this discussion, Dr. Sharp?
Well, we have had an ongoing conversation at Policy and Personnel regarding conditional probation, holding expulsion in abeyance policy. Currently here in Belvedere, the process that we use for conditional probation is the administration meets with the student and then makes a recommendation for the essentially expulsion held in abeyance. And we share that information with the board, we share information about what happens with those students and track that data, but the board does not approve those CPAs. The committee, policy committee discussed, should the board be approving these and should we be doing some additional research to see what other districts are doing. I did reach out to some like-sized districts in our area. Harlem, Hananiga, and Rockford all use CPAs or EIAs, expulsions in abeyance. Harlem and Hananiga use essentially the same process that we currently use. Rockford does do a board approval process. They utilize their hearing officer to hear all those. Adam shared with us at the policy committee meeting some insights regarding that. Adam, do you want to sort of walk through some of those pieces and then the board can maybe discuss and ask some additional questions?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So one of the issues that came up just had to do with timing, right? You have a lot of flexibility with respect to utilizing conditional probation agreements. There's nothing within Senate Bill 100 or the rest of the school code that speaks to a conditional probation agreement. what it is legally is essentially another intervention short of expulsion that some districts choose use, others do not use. So you have, keep that in the back of your mind as you discuss this. There's a lot of flexibility to implement this as you see fit. One of the concerns, just practically speaking, though, with having perhaps the board approve these agreements, similar to them hearing expulsion hearings, is timing. Because, as you're probably familiar, after 10 days that a student is out of school via suspension, they have to come back or be expelled. That 11th day, by law, means they need to return to the district. So there could be a scenario in which a student commits an offense, the administration says we're going to, essentially recommend conditional probation, but the board won't hear that until next month unless it has a special meeting. If the board, rejects the conditional probation recommendation and proceeds to expulsion, then you're going to have an expulsion hearing that may take some time to organize and, go through. All the while, that kid is going to be back in school, making the district's argument that much harder to prove up by saying, yes, he's a threat in the district's best interest, he needs to be removed for this defined period of time, when he's already back in school. And he, may be in good standing, albeit a short amount of time. It's just something to consider that, from a legal process lens, may not be the cleanest approach. Now, it's certainly possible, and you can certainly do it that way, but, I'm always hesitant to advise clients to, do anything that would kind of delay the student discipline process. As lawyers love to argue over process and whether the process was appropriate, whether the process was, somehow flawed, giving their client a second chance or a second bite at the apple. So it's just something to consider as you contemplate, revisions to the conditional probation program. Again, you have the flexibility to take that task on, much in the same way of hearing expulsion hearings. But there is a timing consideration if you're going to be reviewing these agreements in the future. So that's probably the biggest issue that I would raise while you're considering this. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. I know that you've seen a lot of conditional probation agreements, and I've seen your closed session minutes recently, so I understand that. But again, it is just an intervention short of expulsion that really kind of sets you guys up nicely to the extent a subsequent expulsion did take place and it was challenged. You can point back and say, hey, look, everyone was on the same page as to what may come of this if you don't, follow the terms of this conditional probation. So it's a nice clean intervention that's documented that I think, would set you up nicely to defend any expulsion to the extent it's ever challenged.
So I've had a lot to say about it, and I'm the board member who initially asked to have it come forward, and I appreciate the fact that it has been discussed repeatedly. And I was able to participate, although it relatively silently, at the last meeting, because I just couldn't make the technology work for a good part of it. However, I also became aware as a result of the most recent round of conditional probation agreements that we saw, that there was a scenario that was very intriguing to me, which was an expulsion hearing was heard, an expulsion was presented, and then additionally, there was a CPA layered on top of that. And, which is fine, I mean, no issue or question with that. And I just feel like, is there an avenue through which everything comes forward, and just talking out loud, is there an avenue through which everything comes for expulsion, and then once the board has heard it, and you've weighed in on it, and you've chosen to expel, then the administration would be empowered to say, but in this case, we would like to offer them a CPA. So you've said yes, so we meet the timelines because we've added in a whole series of additional special meetings, so we're not likely to be against a clock of, the 10 school days, et cetera. But, is there room to potentially discuss, to potentially look at that as a possible scenario, whereby it comes as an expulsion, the totality of the situation is heard and understood by, whatever board members are in attendance, And then there would be the option that could be considered by the board to say, okay, as Adam shared, you can pivot anytime to a CPA. So, that's not something I came into this whole discussion thinking about or talking about, and frankly, until the most recent information became available and I put together the pieces of, oh, okay, because I wasn't at that expulsion hearing, and I was like, oh, okay, this was a layered approach to how it happened, so. But there has been a lot of discussion about it, so.
I have a question.
Oh.
What problem are we trying to solve?
So for me, it's a problem about, I think, we hear all the time, which is valid and true, that's not trivializing that, there's always a story. But when you read them and you don't know any of the story, right, these are expellable offenses, right? These are offenses for which a student could be expelled. We have no insight whatsoever, and into the story, into the backstory, and there was some talk about the possibility of maybe layering in additional information on that lane. But there has been some concern on my part about the fact that, from month to month, and again, understanding there's a story, there's a very different set of consequences that are applied in many circumstances, and, that is concerning to me. Again, I don't know the stories because we're not privy to that. So for me, it's solving a matter of saying, having the board, these are offenses for which they could be expelled, expulsions come to the board, and still leaving a mechanism or a lane for administration to say, but, and then the secondary thing is, we get the CPAs, and we hear about the conditions of the CPAs, and they contain very specific language oftentimes about percentage of attendance or, a number of conditions they have to meet. And yet, again, an expellable offense, they're offered these opportunities, but we never hear feedback whatsoever about, are these being fulfilled? Now I think very, very recently, it changed a little bit. We did get something like it in a May report, but at the very least, I think we ought to be able to have some level of follow-up that provides all of the CPAs that are in force are being adhered to, and who's monitoring that, and what's the oversight of those, to say, if we set very specific conditions within that about any number of consequences, for lack of a better word, but I guess that is the right word, who's following up on those?
Is there a
And
concern
what?
that people aren't following up, that admin is not monitoring these and following up on these? Does admin follow up on these and monitor these?
Admin does follow up and monitor these. We did respond to the concern about the board not knowing what happens with those CPAs. I believe we did multiple reports this year regarding the number of CPAs and what was happening with each one of those CPAs. Yes, absolutely, the administration is responsible for monitoring those kids and those conditions. That is certainly true. And we can certainly report it. Again, the board can do whatever they want to do with this. But if that is the question, certainly we can provide some additional rationale. We can continue to report out on what's happening with those CPAs as well.
I think for me, when basically Carl asked what's a compelling why, which I think is a legitimate question. For me, the compelling why is the board's tasked specifically with not a lot of functions. I mean, we have a lot of general governments we hear about all the time and things like that, but this is one of the jobs we're actually tasked with. And these are expellable offenses. These aren't meandering in the minutia of too many tardies or, skipping class or, getting caught smoking out in the parking lot and stuff like that. These are the most serious offenses that with the Senate Bill 100, they have to be they have to be worse than they did before and multiple times than they were before. The kids get removed from school. And I think that the last one we had was an example that if we wouldn't have had, if that would have gone, that decision turned out differently based on the 4 people listening to it than it would have before that, in my opinion. We came to a compromise. I don't think anybody walked out of there getting what they wanted to, but I think all 4 people felt satisfied that it was a middle ground for what we wanted to do as a board for the people that were there. So I mean, when I first started doing these many years ago, or 20 years ago, the CPAs came out of the expulsion hearing. You have the expulsion hearing, and then you decided you didn't want to be that punitive, you do a CPA. When I first came to Belvedere 15 years ago, it was the same way. It was a CPA came out of not wanting to go all the way at the expulsion hearing by the board. The board was given a choice, you know, if you really think this is too harsh, how about doing this kind of thing. I think the time frame, the biggest thing to me in the time frame is always gonna be if you have to have a manifestation hearing. Without a manifestation hearing, we have no excuse for not meeting the time frame. I mean, it's not that hard. With a manifestation hearing, it is more, I do concede, it is more difficult, because then you have to have the parent there, and they get to have representation and things like that. That does cause possibly more issues on the time frame. So I do understand that part.
Yeah, that I don't feel comfortable with. That is a risk, and I think putting a child back with either staff or other students in that instance, like what you're talking about, Matt, could be problematic. One of the things Adam did talk about too, kind of to your question, Ms. Wabel, was as far as like the CPA, kind of to what Ms. Whitcomb was saying with kind of like, what's the data that helped in making that determination, whether it warranted an expulsion hearing or a CPA? And Adam had brought up, like, you could in policy draft or in some of our forms have some more of that. So like if I board member, I'm looking at the CPA, I see some of the stuff that maybe I normally would have an expulsion hearing packet, right? Because that does paint the picture a lot of times. I can see there's all the discipline data, there's the attendance data, there's the grades, right? And that helps you to understand that, because to me, it is totally different if it's a first-time offender versus a history, right? So Adam had said that could be an option you could look at where the board doesn't have to bring them all to expulsion, but when the packets are brought forward to us, that additional piece could be there, so we understand why administration was recommending a CPA.
I'm gonna just state here that we'll continue talking about this. I just want to note Ms. Ashens just showed me a weather alert on her phone, so we're gonna do our best to kind of move the meeting
Sure.
along. I don't want anyone
We're not voting on
to
that tonight,
not
so,
say
yeah, we can
anything they
continue the
want to,
discussion.
but I just want
Yeah.
to note that.
No, for sure, we can have that discussion.
Have a discussion when we actually vote on it, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and we don't have to vote on
Does anyone have
it
any more
now.
questions for Adam while he's here? I do want to make use of his time on this.
Just to confirm the indication that you made, and just if I'm hearing this correctly, at any point, even in the expulsion process, we have the ability to pivot and empower administration to say we'd prefer to go forward with a CPA. Even if we have convened an expulsion panel.
Yes, I mean, you can go through a full expulsion hearing, quite frankly.
Yeah, okay.
And you can say at the end, we determined that you committed the gross misconduct, we determined that it's expellable, however, we're gonna hold this in abeyance and we're gonna offer you this conditional probation agreement, and just do it on the back.
Yeah,
right?
and I was not aware that was really fully an option. So, yeah, that's very, very intriguing to me. So, okay, but again, we have more time to discuss this, and I don't think anybody wants to be in a terrible storm.
And this is gonna be revisited at policy still.
So it'll come back to policy again? Is that
It can.
Okay.
I mean, we could talk about it there, but I think we're getting, and Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it affects that many people in policy, so I think them talking about it is just basically me and Sarah hashing it back and forth. And in a good way, not in a negative way at all, it's just that I don't think there's a great interest for most of the other people on the policy committee on this, unless I'm wrong, and Sarah can correct me if I am.
So maybe it just comes back for further discussion on the board? Is that an option? I don't know.
We probably at some point
Just
want
need
a policy to vote on.
Yeah.
So
Also,
I mean,
the committee
we could
would-
make
got it. Okay, yeah.
we could put into language that the board would approve the CPAs, and we could bring that forward for a vote and see what the board wants to do. We could do that or
So in
something
that case, it
else.
would
How about instead of taking it to policy, I mean, I know we could have up to two, we have a couple people meet with you and review what we could do for a policy as a potential instead of dragging the policy committee in. I mean, we could do that eventually, but I think they would be better off.
Or even if it's procedural implications.
Right,
like
they would
if
be
it's
better
just
off served if we
things
had
that
something for them to look at
Yeah, I agree.
specifically and trying to create something,
Okay.
so to speak.
Okay,
And
sounds good.
can I just ask, what was the weather alert? Because I'm not gonna lie, I don't have the best tires.
I've got about
going
4 tornadoes, a
Yeah.
couple severe.
very
Because
well.
that's concerning enough
It's
to
all
me that I
Pretty
would be
much
like,
take
Yep.
I would like to go
Yep.
home.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why we're
I
gonna
hate to
move
say
on.
that, but
It's
We're gonna
big
move
block
on.
of red.
Is there, so I'm gonna move on. Thank you, Adam, for
Thanks,
joining
Adam.
us.
Thanks,
I
Adam.
appreciate it.
3 times in a weekend, that's pretty good. See you later.
District 100 Discipline Guide.
This is going to be coming back to the board in August. I think you've had the opportunity to see it. It went through policy and personnel. Just any additional feedback, the committee's done a fantastic job. Dr. Carson's done a really nice job with this. I think incorporating a lot of stakeholder feedback, but if there's any additional feedback from the board, we would take that. Otherwise, it will go to parent advisory next month and then come back to the board for a vote in August.
Good? Okay, request for Belvedere High School Athletic Stadium building name.
And here I'm bringing forward Athletic Director Sternquist's request that the stadium building at BHS be renamed after Coach Hearn. The fundraiser for that was approved by the board, but the board still needs to go through a process in order to actually approve a naming change. The process for that would be for the board president to pull together a committee once the request has been made of the board. And then we would bring back, after that committee meets, the recommendation for that name change. So I wanted to bring to the board's attention that we have this request from Athletic Director Sternquist. If anyone wanted to sit on that committee or wanted some additional insight into that, we would certainly welcome that. And if there's any other questions or discussion.
Just 30 seconds or less, is that I think Coach Hearn was a great guy. I've worked with him for more than a few years, knew his kids well, played football with my son, and so on and so forth. I'm wholly supportive of naming that stadium building after Coach Hearn. My only problem is I think we need to look at the process, because this one I'm really a big-time supporter of. I'm just nervous about the process, having a fundraiser first in Coach Hearn's name, having people think they're contributing to the building they're gonna name after him, and then deciding whether they're gonna name the building after him.
That is a good point.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's my only problem. I have no problem with naming that building about him at all. Fully support.
Yeah, that's something to think about.
Do you wanna be on the committee? I think there should be a board member on the committee.
I can do
Does
it.
anyone- You wanna do it, Tom?
That's fine. Yeah, let him do it.
Okay.
Fantastic. And totally fair comment. All right.
Alrighty, so upcoming contract renewals and reports, anything of note there?
Nothing of note there.
Alright.
I won't walk us through our superintendent comments, but I do want to tell you that we are again going to have North High School will be closed again tomorrow. Summer school may be closed the whole rest of the week. We are working to create some alternative locations for Wednesday and Thursday of this week. Is there an update beyond that, Joanne?
Yes.
I think we've already
Oh.
made the commitment that
And
we're
we've
moving all
communicated
north
to
over to
families.
Central Middle School Wednesday and Thursday. So
Perfect.
we're not even gonna give
Thank
the
you.
option of not giving people choice. Closed tomorrow, staff can start moving their stuff over.
Correct.
And then we'll open Wednesday and Thursday at Central for all of the students in summer school at North High School.
And for these 2 days, do we have any ESY compensatory minutes or anything that need to be addressed?
So ESY is also going to Central, and we only have one larger piece of equipment, which is a Hoyer, that is going to be transferred, so that's that time tomorrow to be able
Got
to
it.
do that. There was no other equipment that needed to be transferred.
Correct. And staff and families have been updated tonight.
I will not walk through the strategic plan updates either. I
Or
did
financial
ask
updates? Spend
Ms.
what you need to spend. get a
Fabian
sign check.
Check to prepare some comments for you on the special education update. Would you like to hear that? Would you like us to bring it back next month?
Yeah, I would rather bring it back.
Yes.
I want to say thank you
okay?
so
Alright.
much for
Sorry.
preparing
But-
this.
Sorry.
And if you have a long drive, go.
It's very
Yes.
brief and explanatory, so.
Yeah, and it's attached
Just
there.
so you know, interviews are scheduled for special education
Sorry that it's,
supervisor position, so we're.
sorry that going to
Thank
the,
you, and thank you for joining us tonight, I appreciate it.
The Wicked Witch of the
They're not
West
blowing
decided
up
to
my
show up.
phone with me on text
Yes.
messages.
Things are going, all right,
Yeah.
very good.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
so moved. I don't care. Jorge,
All those in
second.
favor say
Aye.
aye.
I have like 4
Opposed, say
tornadoes.
sign. Good night.